So I want to welcome everyone here this evening. This is the Downtown Greenfield Deliberate Downtown presentation that is coming to us this evening, which is the sort of the relaunch of our downtown revitalization plan, which we started in January 2020.
Sounds like this is mostly a listening.
That we started in January 2020 when we launched a forum called the Deliberate Downtown, and then COVID arrived on our doorsteps. Well, we're here tonight because Greenfield was selected by the Commonwealth to participate in the local rapid recovery program designed to support our business community by creating actionable project-based recovery recommendations that are specific to the individual economic challenges and COVID-related impacts in our downtown. This process was launched in early April with a survey of downtown businesses and a walking survey of the streetscape to take a look at both the public and private realm that feeds the environment of our downtown. Tonight, we will hear the findings to date and begin to identify potential priorities and projects. And the goal is by the end of the summer to have actionable plans as strong candidates for funding that we're expecting to see come down from Washington. With that, I'm pleased to hand it over to Mayor Roxanne Wiedegardner, who will provide a welcome and introduction of her vision, and then we'll step in and hear the presentation from the consultants, Peg Berenger and Ted Brovich from Fine Point Associates. And there's a quick overview of what the agenda will look like tonight, and it's all yours, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here. As I have been preparing for this evening, I was thinking about our first Deliberate Downtown. I went back in the archives to try to figure out when it was that we actually did that, because the memory of the exciting meeting is still in my head, and I knew it was after I had taken office, but I think it was February 13th. So we were certainly well into COVID at that point, although I don't think any of us really fully understood that at that time. And of course, this has been one of those kind of years where I had to jump in and deal with what the city had to deal with COVID. But the whole time in the back of my head is, but what about all those wonderful things I wanted to get done and get started on January 2nd of 2020. So Deliberate Downtown has been ever present in the beginning in my mind from that day forward. So I'm happy as I can be to think that we now see some light and we are able to launch this. And I am grateful for all of you who have participated in that committee on the local rapid recovery program. So thank you very much. And thank you to Peg Berenger. And it's very exciting to be able to now think about what we can do to move forward. Certainly when we were able to do downtown recovery work during COVID last year, we had an emphasis on outdoor dining. And the good news about what we did and what MJ did for sure, because she certainly headed up that project, is we like it and our restaurant people like it. And I think we will continue it in some fashion. I'm hoping that as we begin to come out of the recovery and people are able to enjoy outdoor dining in restaurants, that they don't give up on the plan of outdoor dining. So we will attempt to continue doing what we're doing. As you can see, we are doing today. And other ideas I have in mind for this outdoor dining and that we're working on include continuing with improved pedestrian and bicycle safety, better traffic flow downtown, improved quality of open spaces in downtown, supporting the growing dining and entertainment, which I've just talked about. And we had a nice meeting the other day with Ben and Steve Golsher from Hawks and Reed to hear about their plans for reopening and how we might be able to assist them both this summer and beyond. And also growing our unique retail and shopping services that draw folks to downtown. And I don't want to forget the fact that we will continue to focus on being able, George, thank you, George. He said February 27th when we packed Hawks and Reed. So I'm probably thinking about the first email I got on February 13 warning me that this was coming. But anyway, there we are. And we did survive, and here we are tonight. And I'm happy to, as I said, to be here. We're not abandoning the idea of mixed use downtown and being able to create more housing and so forth downtown. I also want to bring into the mix here, and it's not something you would think of necessarily in a revitalized downtown, but it's the two elephants in the room that we cannot ignore, but that I think will be very, very important to how people from the outside perceive our downtown, as well as those of us who live here. And that is the library project and the fire station project. And I am happy, sort of the bookends of Main Street. I'm happy to say that both of those projects, while they have their own individual issues, because they're construction projects, what can I say? And are pretty much on track for development. So by mid-2023, we should be in full scale downtown with both a brand new library and a near finished fire station. So I'm happy to report that. But more significantly, I think, to how to revitalize downtown and help it recover. And I understand now, because we've been through a pandemic, that recovery isn't something that happens overnight. So when I talk about these projects, don't think that they're happening tomorrow. Just know and understand that we are working on them, and those they are goals for me. So if you want to advance to the first slide, Peg, that would be great, or the next slide. Many of you have heard about the Main Street project, and I just simply I'm using this slide and this is sort of midway. This is the project itself, the redesign of Main Street into parallel parking, including bike lanes, goes from High Street to Coleraine Street, just past Fort Square. So it is that entire length of Main Street. It is curb to curb. So, and it is being, we are in the running for state funding from the Department of Transportation. And so I only say that to say these are very, very, very preliminary sketches that were provided to us by the Department of Transportation. Right now, we are still high on their list of funding this, so it'll be well over $5 million in funding to get this done, which is very significant. And we did start the first phase of this with a small amount of funding. And you probably, if you were out and about a few weeks ago, you might have noticed surveyors on the street, on Main Street. That's what they were doing. They were surveying Main Street as sort of the phase one, very early phase one of the project. But it's an exciting project. I'm very happy about it. And I just want to make sure everybody understands there will be plenty of opportunities for public participation in how this gets done. Note that it is, again, the Department of Transportation, so we march a bit to their drum, But they were excited about this project, partly because we were making it bicycle friendly and wanting to improve the safety of pedestrians and also automobiles, for that matter of fact, and handicap. And I just wanted, I'm noting here, and again, these are very preliminary, so please don't ask me questions about how they're going to get this done, because I don't know yet. But each one of the major intersections, whether it's this one at Federal Street and Bank Row, which is a very significant one, or further down, will be widened and have improved disability access. And I just want to note again that these are extremely preliminary, and as the Department of Public Works, Marla Warner and I get more information and feel that we can share it with you based on commitments from the Department of Transportation, we will share it with the public. You can go to the next slide. The next slide is the Court Square renovation, redo, redesign. Many of you a few years ago were part of public participation on how to make Court Square a more pedestrian friendly and more viable, vibrant downtown space. I was on the planning board at that time, and it was very exciting. Unfortunately, I was doing a lot of traveling, so I wasn't able to take part in a lot of those meetings. But nevertheless, since then, and since deciding to run for mayor and becoming mayor, it's been a priority of mine to get that done. And as MJ mentioned, we may be able to do some of that in through funding from that's coming in from Washington. Again, I don't want to commit to that, and I don't want to commit right yet to a timeline, but as soon as I can get working on it between federal grants and state grants, we will begin to pull that off using the initial designs as a guide. So to that end, we are piloting a pedestrian plaza in the Court Square this summer. So at some point we will block that off and make it available as a pedestrian plaza. To that end, and is certainly part of the overall design, we are also piloting the redoing of the traffic flow, I guess is the words I'm trying to come up with. So that is what this one shows. So there will be a right turn lane off of Main Street onto Bank Row, and you will then now finally be able to enter Bank Row, Newton Street beside Court Square. And this is sort of indicative of the original plan. We're just checking it out to see if it's working. Enter from Bank Row and go to the back parking lot. And then of course we are accommodating the exit as well, which is pretty much the same, although it will require a redesign of the parking in front of Congregational Church. But we are certainly in both in conversations with Hawks and Reed, because it will affect them, and certainly the Congregational Church. The overall goal is to use that alleyway between the City Hall and Hawks and Reed as a place for people to relax, perhaps enjoy a meal, whether it comes from Hawks and Reed or whether you've done takeout. I want this to be a really usable, friendly place for people to gather. And as I said, we're using the original design as a jumping off point for that. Lastly, and probably should have been first, because it's the one that is more formulated, is Fisk Avenue and a redo of the parking lot. Step one, thanks to an AARP grant, it is partially completed. And as you've noticed, well, we do have the bee, the wonderful bee, the Celtic bee. And we will be doing a full reconfiguration later this year if we get the Mass Shared Streets grant. The full completion of that it seems like, well, that would be easy. You could tear up a parking lot and plant some grass, and a couple of trees here and there, and be on your way. But we really don't want to displace parking for the businesses that are along Fisk Avenue. So it requires a little bit of engineering work and a little bit more than what you see there. But right now we are moving towards the completing the pocket park. We did order some a new bicycle rack, bicycle pumping station. I forget what it is. I should know. Benches, and I think that was it. I believe. I should, yeah. But anyway, looking forward to phase one being completed and people enjoying it. I do see people there already enjoying it. And we did fix the wall earlier this year. So you do have a brand new retaining wall. And of course, the beautiful gardens at the back, which again, I think there's some folks on here who were very instrumental in that. And I do want to thank you for that. And I can't wait to see it start blooming. Aha, Carol says there'll be a chess table, which I had forgotten about. That's really important. I intend to put a couple of chess tables on Court Square too. And a bike repair station. That's the piece I was looking for. And I think that's it. I'm going to hand it off to Peg Berenger with the really important things that are happening this evening.
Okay, well, thanks, Mayor and MJ. That was a great background and a good jumping off point for us. Just so you know who's on our call with us, of course, the Mayor you've already heard from, and MJ. I'm Peg Berenger from Fine Point Associates, and I'm in this process, Fine Point is the plan facilitator for the project, and part of our team, Ted Brovitz from Brovitz Community Planning and Design, and Tuti Tapa is with us tonight as well. And Tuti's gonna help with some of the technical assistance, so you might be seeing her comments in the chat, getting back to you. We just wanted to start out with just telling you a little bit about where we are in this process. The Rapid Recovery Program really has 3 phases: the diagnostic phase, then the ideas phase, and then the final plan. And we're just done with the diagnostic phase and into the ideas phase. So what we're hoping to spend a little time with you tonight is tell you some of our findings, some of the ideas that have come out so far, and here's some more ideas from you. That's our idea, that's our plan. And just to give you a little bit about what's been going on, it's been kind of an interesting journey. We've been able to talk to a lot of people and have meetings and have exercises. We've done a lot of data collection and analysis. SGIC was wonderful. They put teams together and worked with us on doing a physical assessment. We had walkabout tours with community leaders and business owners and residents, and had listening section. We've done a business survey. We did interviews with downtown organizations and folks that operate downtown events. And we're also going to talk to you a little bit tonight about the consumer preferences survey. And our idea is to give you some findings that we've come up with that might have been from any of those activities, you know, because we've been working together so far. We also would like to get some input from you. And then we're going to have we're going to try to use some technology to get some input from you. And we'll do it, you know, kind of new school at the first part of the meeting, and then we'll wrap around, and at the end of the meeting, we're going to have it open for comments, and we'll do it old school, where we're just talking to each other. But we wanted to try out something. We want to try out this tool, menti.com. And it's a bit of an experiment for us all, so we'll see how it goes. But what we'd like you to do, you can either use a different device, that's the easiest. If you use a different device than you're watching us on Zoom, like your smartphone or a tablet, and go to this website, menti.com. And when you get there, I'm going to give you a number to put in. The other thing you could do if you just have your computer is open up a new browser and then just go to that website. So put us in one browser, put us in a little window in the Zoom, and then open up another window, another browser, and go to menti.com. So can I get everybody to try to do this? We're going to start off trying to do this right now. So see if you can go to menti.com. And I'm going to mention to you that a couple of things. When we get there, you're going to have to put in a number that I'm going to give you a minute. That's your code. And then once you put in that number, you don't have to go back and do that again for the rest of the meeting. You should be all set. We can just keep going back and forth, and you can put input as we go along. And the other thing is that, just a reminder, if we ask you questions, you might have to scroll down to the bottom and hit a submit button. So if we ask you a question and you respond up here, you have to sometimes scroll down to the bottom of your phone and hit the submit button before it goes in. So that's just a reminder. So I'm going to switch over to Menti, and I'm hoping that people are in there, and we'll see how this goes. I'm going to just ask you one question at the beginning, just to make sure that we're all on it. Then we're going to come back to this again in a few minutes.
Where's the code you enter?
Do we have the code, please?
So see that number at the top? 2258-4794. That's your code. And then you should see a screen that looks like mine. So MJ, I'm seeing you nod your head. So are we good so far? Okay. So I'm gonna advance this. I want to ask you a question. So I'd like you to tell us what characteristics or values you would like the downtown Greenfield to exhibit. So you have 3 lines there. Put just one word in each of those 3 lines. And then you have to submit, remember? So the words will come up, the bigger the word, the bigger the volume, the frequency of what it heard. So cleanliness is pretty high, vibrancy is pretty high, community, welcoming. We still got responses coming in, so I'm going to wait a second. It's going to give us a pretty nice word cloud. Okay, I think once the responses slow down, we can stop, but I just wanted to sort of start out with a little bit of a vision, just a few words that kind of get some ideas going. And it looks like, we're seeing a lot of inclusive, attractive, welcoming, friendly, vibrancy, beauty came up pretty high. So.
Yeah. Do you want one of those?
Okay, I think we have somebody that doesn't have a mute on. So I'm going to leave this alone. We're going to come back here, but now that you know how to use it, we're going to ask you several questions as we go along to get your feedback. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing that for a moment and come back. Okay, so we're going to move on. And we're going to come back to Menti a couple of times. But what I'd like to do now is we're going to talk about the findings in two groups. So the first group is really the physical realm, the public realm, the private realm, accessibility and zoning. And then we'll stop and we're going to get a little bit of input. Then we'll have part two of our findings. And we're going to talk about the business environment, the real estate environment, and the market and the district management. And then we'll get a little bit of your feedback. And then we're going to come and have a more open discussion. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Ted Brovitz, right now, who's going to lead us in the findings about the physical environment.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Peg. Glad to be here tonight. And I've had an enjoyable time spending in Greenfield and learning more about all of your ideas and potential opportunities. There's a lot to be excited about, and I'm glad to be part of it. So as Peg mentioned, I'm going to talk about some of the physical environment findings, but also potential opportunities as well. To start to plant some ideas and start to thinking about things that the community might do looking forward in terms of downtown. So let's go to the next slide. So in terms of findings, one of the first things I noticed in spending some time is that it's a very walkable downtown. You know, the core area, is really sort of a traditional down New England downtown with the buildings up along the sidewalks. The blocks are about 300 to 400 feet apart, which is really great for pedestrians because there's something to look around the corner at, and it sort of creates it slows down traffic because the more intersections there are in the core area, the slower the traffic goes. There's good street enclosure, meaning that the height of the buildings in relation to the width of the street is good. So when there's a good enclosure, there's comfortable, it's comfortable for the pedestrians, and it also tends to slow down traffic a little bit as well. And for the most part, there's really no interruption in the sidewalks by curb cuts or parking. So the core area is really sort of consolidated and traditional. A little bit of change on the west end with some of those more auto-oriented type businesses. And then on the east end, you have a lot more institutional buildings, which are typically set back with nice sort of open spaces in front. So for the most part, it's a very walkable downtown. Next slide. One of the things, though, that I noticed is that at the main intersection, what we call the 100% corner, there's not a lot of activity going on. So we're talking about Main Street, the Bank Row, Federal Street. You don't have any real shops and restaurants that sort of enliven that corner. And that's really kind of a critical thing for a downtown center, an old downtown center. In a lot of cities in town, you'll notice that there's more sort of enhancements to the streets and the streetscapes. There'll be storefronts, there'll be restaurants, and there'll typically be a lot of activity. And even though we have some real anchors, obviously Hawks and Reed is a major anchor for downtown and a wonderful facility, there's really no sort of visual sign or indication that it's there, that you can really observe from the intersection. So you really have to know it's there, or you have to have it on your phone to find out where it is. And same on some of the other corners. Obviously the TD Bank building with that big blank facade. I was a planning director in Brattleboro 20 years ago, and came to Greenfield and said, why can't we do something with that facade? It just it doesn't really sort of lend itself to vibrancy and sort of activation. So I think that that's something to think about. I know that the mayor's plans for the park for Central Square or Court Square is really an opportunity to enliven that corner, and that would make a major difference in terms of impression on people that aren't familiar with Greenfield. So that's one thing to think about. It's a real opportunity to do some real simple things to make it a better place. So things like just some sort of mural on that blank wall, at the corner where the Hawks facility is, some kind of like corner marquee, just to sort of create a real sort of visual sign that this is a major facility. And even things you can do with lighting at night to sort of light up the facades at night. Simple things like that can really make a major difference.
Wow.
Next slide.
Who are those people?
They got hired. I don't know who they are.
So there's no, one of the things we notice is that there's lots of really good spaces, not a lot, but there's some really nice publicly owned open spaces in and around the downtown area. You've got the Common at Court Square, you've got Energy Park, Veterans Parks, but these are typically, small areas and really not that visible and really not very programmable today. And, it's not like a lot of traditional downtowns in New England that have large open commons where you have the ability to do all kinds of activities, program large festivals and events. So we really have to do the best we can with the smaller places that we have in downtown in terms of programming. So next slide. So obviously, the new library, that provides a real opportunity if there's some civic space in front of that with a plaza of some sort. We talked about the Court Square and the extension of the common area right there. That could be a really wonderful programmable space. The new Pocket Park at Fifth Avenue, same thing. And even things like the top of the Olive Street garage. I mean, that could be an open space. And there's a lot of cities and towns that have built garages over the years and really don't have a very good occupancy rate, particularly on the rooftop. And they have started to think about leasing that space, such as the image down below here, to private enterprises. So this is a top of a public garage in Louisville, Kentucky. It's called 8 Up. So it's the 8th story and it's the top of the garage. And it's a really wonderful bar and restaurant, which has spectacular views over the city and is very popular. And the city didn't really lose anything because it's just barely any occupancy up there at all. So I'm not suggesting that we do that in Greenfield, but if there's that opportunity, it's something to consider at least. And not only the Fisk Avenue park that's being planned, but all of these smaller parks in the downtown area. Thinking about different ways we can program it with anything from exercise and music and showing movies to something more more significant, like down in Hyannis, where they have the art shanties, which they lease out to local artists every year. And because there's a cluster of them, there's maybe 5 or 10 of them there, it really draws a big crowd, and it's really beneficial to the local artists. So just an idea for programming in the future. Next slide. So wayfinding is sort of hit or miss downtown. There are some wayfinding signs. They're kind of hard to read, especially if you're driving a car. You see on the upper left, there's some wayfinding there. Energy Park, which is a really nice sign that the rec department put out. That's nice, but you really don't see it sort of tucked away behind into the trees there. So it's really not well seen by people who are traveling through town. And I know that you've done some preliminary wayfinding and marketing or branding ideas with a consultant that was hired through the state's downtown program. But I think it's really something to think about and try to do as part of the street improvement project, is to provide a better system of wayfinding, both leading into downtown as well as around downtown. It makes a big difference in terms of people getting to the places they want to be, and really identifying points of public interest they may not be familiar with. So it's an important thing to focus on in the future. Slide. So things like, again, I love the Energy Park sign. That's a good start. I think it's really important when you're doing a wayfinding system that there's coordination between all the public entities and quasi-public entities in terms of style and colors and fonts, just as, to make it sort of, consistent across the board. So it's easier to pick up if you're from out of town. I think a kiosk, an informational kiosk, as you see in the middle there, that's really important. That, if people get out of their cars and go onto the sidewalk, they have information such as a business directory map and other things that are going on in the community. And there's some really interesting new wayfinding interpretive signage being done in different cities. On the right there, you can see an example where it's a historic building, and that sign in front of you on the sidewalk is showing what the original purpose and use of it was. And it's sort of, it's sort of then and now type interpretive signage, which is really interesting. Next slide. So there's a lot of public art downtown. It's really, a lot of, distributed all through Main Street area, all different types, from murals to statues to, the new bee statues and other works of art. It's really a plus for downtown. And I think every opportunity you have to put, new artwork downtown, you would take advantage of it, whether it's on public spaces such as the garage or in private areas such as, specifically for blank walls and that sort of thing. It really sort of enhances and makes your downtown really unique. So so in terms of future opportunities, next slide. Things like, even like bike racks can be works of art. So you see the bike racks they have over on Avenue A in Turner's Falls, they're fish, the fish bike racks, which are really neat. And they're doing the curb extensions, which I know that's part of the conceptual plan for Main Street. And in those curb extensions, they're doing some public art installments, which is really nice, including the benches and some additional statues in there, or at least sort of works of art. And so that's really great stuff. That's really good use of public spaces. There's other great examples. There's public painting walls, art walls. In Arizona, in Sedona, there's this really great stand, a bus stand, or bus station where there's a outdoor xylophone, which is really kind of fun. Love, people walk up to it and use it all the time. And you really can't go wrong with a xylophone because any sound that comes out of it is kind of soothing. So it's not like any other type of instrument. And then there's, interpretive signs like this one on the bottom, which is in Lyons, New York, on the canal, the Erie Canal. And it's basically just interpreting the history of the community and its relationship to the canal. So all kinds of opportunities for new public art. Loitering and panhandling was something that was identified to us in community surveys. And as we took the walkabout and talked to folks around the community, the police department also identified in the garage, there's an issue of loitering and drug use. So, certainly, this is a sensitive issue and needs to be addressed as you move forward into these different programs. In terms of the private realm, those buildings and businesses that are facing Main Street. Go ahead. There's a lot of really good storefronts, and that have one or two really high quality treatments, but there's real opportunity for more. It's really important for downtown businesses to make an impression on pedestrians as they walk by. They have a very limited amount of time, so if the typical pedestrian is walking 3 to 4 feet per second, you have less than 8 seconds on average. Really make impression, whether it's your signage, whether it's your window displays, or other things. It's really important to get their attention and draw them in. And I think we can do more of that in downtown. Like I said, there's a lot of great examples of different elements, storefront treatments, but not the right overall combination in most of the storefronts. So next slide. So things like, having, good outdoor merchandise displays, really good window displays is important. Having a, attractive facade and signs, but creating sort of a combination of things. So if you have a wall sign like you do in most of the storefronts on Main Street, why not also have a projecting sign and an awning and some flowers under the windows? That combination is what really draws attention and creates, interest in your downtown. And projecting signs are particularly important because if you're on the sidewalk and you're really not familiar with the different businesses that are located there, the projecting signs that project over the sidewalk are easy to identify, and really you can see them a block or two away. So it helps visitors really find things that they're interested in. And it also is visible to cars. So It really is important to think about the combination of wall signs as well as projecting signs, and also to be creative with your signs. So you look on the right there, those type of icon type signs where there's, different types of applications within the sign itself. In that case, it's a bakery and they've got a sifter there. That kind of stuff really creates that identity that is important for any downtown. Next slide. That's just some more, combinations. Here's, Plum is a really great storefront. They've got good window displays. They have outdoor planters, a nice wall sign, outdoor merchandise. But if you stand at Court Square and you look down Main Street, you have no idea they're there, even though they're just 100 feet away or so. And if they had a projecting sign, you would see it and you would be drawn to it. So, those types of things are really important, that combination of signs. On the lower left, you see there's a sidewalk chef. And, I really love that. And this is out west, guy making crepes on the sidewalk, which was a really popular thing. So there's all kinds of ways to activate your storefronts, both on the inside and the outside, to draw people in. Next slide. So I don't have all the numbers, but I don't know what the upper floor occupancy rates are in downtown, but I get the impression that there's really not a lot of people living downtown. There's not a lot of apartment units or ownership units, particularly market rate housing units. And so I think that if there are those opportunities in the upper floor spaces, and I suspect there are, it could be a really important thing to add more residential up there as well as office space if there's that opportunity. Next slide. So a lot of cities and towns around New England are, if they don't already, they are adding residential to the mix of uses allowed in downtown. And a lot of them are very specific that they don't want them to be at street level, at least on their main streets, but they want them to be up above the streets. And what that does is it fills vacant space, but it also provides a stream of revenue for the property owner to work on improvements throughout the building, including the ground floor space where commercial uses would go. Not only that, but it provides more diversity in the housing stock, more choices for different income and age groups. And it really becomes one of your primary customer bases right above your shop. So it's important. And there's a lot of good examples in terms of examples that are close by. Brooks House in Brattleboro, which had a devastating fire about 10 years ago. They restored and renovated that building, and they were able to get 23 market rate apartments in there, as well as a number of other office spaces and so on the upper floors. And then next slide. In Northampton, another nearby example where they're doing a lot of infill development and residential and mixed use development in their downtown area, and also in their Florence Center section of the city. But those are just two examples of a lot of changes are being made around New England in terms of more residential downtown to provide a bigger customer market. Next slide. And then of course there's key opportunities, properties that are underutilized or vacant. I know some of these have been talked about for a number of years. Obviously, the First National Bank has been involved with for quite a while and looking for solutions for that, that beautiful building. Wilson's was a real loss for the community, obviously, and I know that the city is working with the owners to try to find some future use for it. I think Greenfield Community College having a presence downtown and really establishing sort of a town-gown relationship with the city is great. And I think that their entrepreneurship center, which is sort of blossoming, and what they plan to do at street level on Main Street is really going to be positive for the community. And of course, the new public library is pretty exciting. It's going to be a real, obviously continue to be a major anchor and even more, more so than before. And then there's private spaces like the old private library, which is a beautiful building, but you know, just needs some tender loving care and some new purpose. Next slide. So I'll talk a little bit about accessibility. Next slide. I know I'm running out of time here. Downtown is very accessible from 91 as well as Route 2, actually. You've got the regional bus service or bus authority, regional transit authority that's based out of the Oliver Center, which is really beneficial to local as well as regional residents. You've got train service on Amtrak as well as the service down to Hartford, which is great. It brings people to your doorstep, but it also serves local and regional residents. And you've got great bike trails in and around Greenfield and around the valley that have tremendous potential to draw people in. Next slide. Downtown has complete streets, meaning that it's got a combination of accommodations for buses and cars, and there's parking there. There's, even though there's no designated bike lanes today, that's part of the plan for the future. So it does accommodate a variety of different modes of transportation, which is really important for any main street. Next slide. And that's something that, the mayor would point out that it's going to be part of the discussion in developing improvement plans for main streets, including, what do we do with the center medians, the travel lanes, on-street parking. There's some discussion about, angled versus parallel parking. I noticed that there were some curb extensions and crosswalks on the concept plan. That's really important. Bus pullouts and stops, bike lanes, I think are going to be added to the plan. And anything that you can do in terms of traffic calming, is important for downtown. So, basically, as we, get into the design process for Main Street, what's really important to remember is that there's got to be a balance between the pedestrians and the vehicles. So you want to keep the traffic moving, typically 18 to 20 miles an hour. Slow and steady is really, a good speed, because at that speed, the driver has the opportunity to see all the activity in the storefronts that are on the street. When you start going faster, it becomes more of an issue in terms of pedestrian safety, and they don't tend to see all the storefronts that are there. So slow and steady is really optimal speed and needs to be considered in the design process. The public parking, or the parking system downtown, I think it overall is pretty good in terms of its capacity. It's well distributed. There's a good balance between public and private parking. There's a good balance between surface parking, on-street parking, and the garage. So overall, the physical process, the physical parking is good. I know there's a lot of discussion about the meters and the enforcement and the timing, but those are things that certainly will be hashed out as part of the process for Main Street and planning process for the street improvements. Next slide. And we talked about the balanced parking. Again, if we find that there are underutilized surface parking lots, or even the garage, again, that creates a new opportunity possibly for programming events, whether it's food trucks, classic cars, or something like that. Even on-street spaces where there's not a lot of activity there, you can use for food trucks and that sort of thing. And now we're going to talk about zoning and regulations. So basically, Greenfield has a conventional zoning ordinance. It really focuses on the building envelope, what's typical, in terms of building placement, frontage, height, landscaping, that sort of stuff. That's really the focus. Next slide. But in a downtown environment, it's really important to have a sort of a symbiotic relationship between what gets developed on these individual lots and then the street that it faces. So there's got to be more of an emphasis on the facade treatments, and there's a setback area between the sidewalk and buildings. What happens in that space becomes very important. Typically, you don't want to see landscaping. You want to see some sort of extension of the sidewalk, such as you see here on the lower right, where you've got a little forecourt, or you've got little plaza where people can sit and enjoy the atmosphere. So, and even on the open space in downtowns could include rooftop type open spaces, which again become very popular over time. The signage, you've got some basic sign regulations. I'm not sure that it encourages that combination of signs that we were talking about before. I think that there's probably the likelihood that to do anything like that, you probably have to go to ZBA for a special permit. So, going, next slide. So what a lot of cities and towns are doing now is they're coming up with design standards for all different types of sign and the combination of these signs so that, good quality signage is ensured. And if it's insured, then you can approve those administratively without having to go to the planning board or to the ZBA. So sorry I went over my time limit, Peg, but we had a lot of slides to cover.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. What we'd like to do is just ask you a few questions. So we're going to go back over to the Menti. So if you look at your phone or your browser or your tablet, and we'll ask you some questions. So these are questions that kind of follow up on Ted's presentation. We want to ask you how important it is for downtown to have a centrally located public open space. So if I could catch you to look at your phone or your other browser and vote in. Okay, well, it looks like we have a pretty good track record here for very important. We still have a few people voting. Okay, great. Well, thank you. Thank you for doing that. Yeah, so it looks like
All over the place.
a lot of people thinking that important. Okay, here's our next question. How do you feel about the following statements pertaining to the public realm? So now you've got a slider bar. And if you could just slide it over from strongly disagree to strongly agree. We'll kind of see where people feel about these different things. We still have quite a few votes coming in. Okay, thank you for doing that. Strongly agree, really, pretty much, very much in agreement on a lot of these. Public art, coming out very, very strongly agree with the public art, okay. And I think this question was prompted because we've heard issues about parking, but there's so many different aspects of parking. We weren't really sure what aspects that people felt were a problem. So what we're asking here is which parts of the parking system don't you think are working? So pick any of those that you think are not working well. And if there's no issues, then you can choose the last option, which is no issues with parking. Okay, well, thank you for that. It looks like issues with angled parking got a lot of votes there. Okay, thank you. And I think this might be our last one. Oh, no, that's not. I'm sorry. This is our last one. What storefront treatments do you think the downtown needs more of? And this is another one of those ones, check all that apply.
Not letting us check all that apply.
It's not.
Mm-mm.
So I'm sorry, that's our fault. It's just going to let you check your top. It's going to just let you check your top one then. Okay, well, I think we've got most of our votes in. Okay, thanks so much for doing that. And I think that is our last one in this section.
Oh.
Okay, we're just going to move over for a moment. So we're going to talk about part 2 of our findings, which have to do with the business environment and the market environment, and a little bit about district management. So I want to talk a little bit about the real estate findings. And we did a lot of data collection and, calculating and things, and I don't think you want to hear about all of that. We're just going to hit a few highlights here. But one of the things that we thought was interesting was that downtown Greenfield encompasses just about 1 million square feet of commercial space, which is a lot. And just to give you kind of a reference, that would be at least 2 times the Hampshire Mall in Hadley and about half the amount in the Empire State Building. And you've got 11% of your commercial units are vacant and about 18% of the square footage is vacant. And the vacancies really come in 2 categories, vacant storefronts, but then also large vacant properties. And I think some of the opportunities here, what other communities have done with vacant storefronts, one of the things that they've done is they've either used a carrot or a stick approach. In Arlington, it's more of a stick approach. They have a storefront bylaw, which you have to register vacant space, and there's a fee that goes along with that. And in Taunton, they've tried commercial rent subsidy program that provides rent subsidy for the first couple of years of new businesses. And both of those programs have been quite successful. With larger properties, communities can sometimes help obtain gap financing from agencies like Mass Development. And something with the First National Bank building, that project, I know the city has been studying that for quite a while, and so far the large development cost has been a deterrent. Another consideration might be to just explore the idea of preserving only the facade. That's something they've tried in other communities, and eliminating the structure. The little photo in the bottom is in Louisville, and it's where they took away the building, they left the facade, and they opened it up for a social gathering venue in behind it. And that might be something you could think about for F&B, while you're waiting for future development. A little bit about the business environment. There's 327 businesses downtown. And I think one of the findings is that downtown Greenfield's really a place of necessity. You've got a combination of commercial and institutional uses that people really need to go for. You have essential groceries, there's the library, there's, town hall, you have agencies and organizations as far as retail that people need. And when it's a place of necessity, then that's what will draw people in. And while they're there getting essential goods and services, they'll buy something else or do other things. So that's important for a downtown. I think one of the other thoughts here is that retail-tainment, I don't know if you're familiar with that term, but that's really a combination of retail and entertainment. That's been a trend for the last couple of years. And I think it's going to be even more important as we try to get people to come back to downtown. And downtown Greenfield's lucky to have several recreation and entertainment related anchors like Hawks and Reed and the Garden, Cinema, and the Y. Downtown also has several established clusters, that provide crossover patronage or else comparative shopping opportunities to consumers. And when we looked at downtown compared to other downtowns of similar size, where downtown Greenfield comes out, it has a pretty wide variety of eating and drinking, and especially entertainment facilities. Above average, I'd say average to above average amount of outdoor dining, a very strong representation of retail, but below average representation of new goods compared to used goods and vintage merchandise. Above average amount of healthcare and social services, strong concentration of community serving, and about above average amount of professional and technical services, mostly because of the large amount of small legal practices. Greenfield was a bit harder hit. Greenfield businesses seem to be a bit harder hit by COVID than other commercial districts. 94% of the businesses reported negative impacts from COVID. The majority of businesses had revenue decline, reduced operating hours, unplanned expenses, and more than half were closed for a certain period of time. 45% of downtown Greenfield businesses reported laying off staff, and that's a little bit higher than all the other commercial districts in the RRP program at 38%. And 32% of downtown Greenfield businesses said they had to defer rent or mortgage payments, and that's higher also, 21% in the rest of the communities. 71% lost revenue year over year, 22 versus to about 2019. And about half the businesses, their revenue loss was more than 25%. On a positive note, 42% of the businesses said they established an alternative mode for selling or delivering, which is good because I think omni-channel retailing is really what the future of retail is about. And omni-channel means that you've got more than one way to sell. You're selling bricks and mortar, you might be doing curbside pickup, you might be also selling on the internet, or maybe you're selling through Etsy or some kind of specialty website. And Plum is a good example of that because they do have the bricks and mortar, but they also have a good website presence and do sales that way. Most of the businesses are small independent retailers. 80% of them are independently owned. That's not from the survey, that's from an inventory. And also we see a sharp decline of activity in the evening with stores and businesses open after 6 o'clock. The businesses were mostly, we asked them about their satisfaction with downtown, and they were kind of in the neutral category for most of the categories. I would say they most said that they were dissatisfied with conditions of private buildings, facades, and storefronts and signage. They did mention regulations, that they felt that there was regulations that posed some obstacle to doing business, and parking regulations were the ones that they looked at most often, they cited most often. The strategies that they felt were most important: business recruitment, safety and cleanliness improvements, and more cultural events. So 65% or more of the businesses said that those were very important or important. And the other 4 really also ranked pretty highly: more outdoor dining and selling, changes in parking, marketing the district, and storefront renovation. And the kind of assistance people wanted: marketing came up high, and low-cost financing for facades and storefronts came up high. And I think that, when we talk about marketing the district, which came out in the survey pretty high, I think what our finding is that there's room to improve district marketing and branding in order to help customers come to downtown. As Ted mentioned, wayfinding is very limited. There's no on-site business directory to make customers more aware of the offerings that are there. There's very minimal definition and branding of the district to tell you that you're in a special place and when you've entered it. The chamber serves as a great visitor information center, but it's not well identified and easily found by visitors. There's no outside marking of the building that you would even know that was a visitor center. There's a Visit Greenfield page on the city website, which has a business directory, so that's great, that's very helpful. It probably could be enhanced with a little more dynamic information and some linkages. And I think the big thing as we move out of COVID is that it's really important to get people back in the habit of coming downtown. So I think what's happened is people have changed their behaviors in the last year. They've gotten much more comfortable with online shopping. They've gotten much less comfortable going out of the house. They've gotten very comfortable with ordering food delivery. But now as vaccination rate rises, a window is really opening to shape new routines. And it's important to get customers coming back and keeping them coming back. We had a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and we talked a lot about the physical improvements that Ted mentioned earlier. And one of the business owners at that meeting said, well, that sounds good, but what we really need is we need more people walking down the street and browsing and buying, and that's what we heard from other, business owners. We have to get people back downtown. We need foot traffic. We need to make people feel that it's safe. So we researched other communities to see what they were doing to bring people back down and try to get this habit of people coming back down again. And I think that the results, what we found was streamlining the approval process in order to use public and private outdoor space for dining and selling, some pop-up markets, supporting and expanding your existing attractions. And from what the mayor said at the beginning, it sounds like you're already doing that, trying to work with Hawks and Reed and anything you do to help them get open again. That same would go with Lava or your other, attractions. You're also new attractions. I mean, the bee structures that landed in downtown are a new attraction for downtown. Create fun and inviting places. And, with your pocket park that you're planning and Court Square, that would be new, fun and exciting places. The people that we talked to really reminded us, though, that you can't just have a space, you have to have programming. So that's really important to create events and to develop programming. And as you, are starting to think about I know you're starting to do your pop-up temporary Court Square Plaza, to make sure that you also program events to happen there and maybe program events to happen in the park. So people get used to that habit. And it also gives them something new to think about and come down to downtown to do. Beef up your marketing efforts, so promote downtown and what's new with social media campaign, and make it easier to walk and bike downtown. So those were a lot of the strategies that people talk to us about. I just have a couple of things to say about the customer base. Downtown's really got the opportunity to attract people that live in the surrounding area. They also have the opportunity to attract other segments like employees and visitors. We did look at the primary trade area for the resident market segment, and we looked at where else people shop and what the opportunities are and how long it takes them to get to shopping and circulation routes and all that stuff. And we determined that it's about a 7-mile trade area from downtown is probably the primary trade area. And the secondary trade area is probably Franklin County. And you can see from our statistics on the right, there's 34,000 people in that primary trade area and almost 69,000 in Franklin County. And there's sales leakage that really kind of points to opportunity for businesses downtown. Sales leakage is the difference between what the residents spend on goods and services and what the businesses are doing in sales. And what that means is that they're doing these sales, they're spending their money someplace else. And there's leakage in both trade areas. So there's $69 million of leakage outside of the primary trade area and $229 million outside of the secondary trade area. And one of the things we look at is restaurants quite a bit. And this was an interesting thing that $50 million is being spent outside at restaurants. So what that means is that people that live in Franklin County are spending at least $50 million outside of Franklin County. And that points to the opportunity that there may be some additional restaurant opportunity if you can offer some similar offerings that people are going outside for now. The visitor segment, is probably something that could be attracted. There's probably more opportunity to attract visitors into downtown Greenfield. And that would help businesses because it would increase sales. But sometimes communities think, well, why would, we should just be improving Greenfield for Greenfield residents. Why would we be improving it for outside people? But how it benefits residents is that it makes for a greater opportunity to have a wider variety of stores and restaurants and entertainment that otherwise you couldn't support if you only had a resident population. So it makes your downtown full of a lot of the more uses that you'd like to have there. And this chart just shows you some of the, we interviewed all the folks that do events downtown, and this is some of the findings about the attendees there. And another one of the great B structures. And the employee market segment, I think one of the findings there, first of all, there's almost 10,000 people that work in Greenfield. And you can see from the map that the highest density is right around downtown. But if the remote working trend continues, downtown may continue to negatively be impacted, particularly in the restaurant and the retail sector. So I think that's something to think about. And when we were trying to figure out, well, what could be done about that? Maybe encourage agencies not to promote remote working, make people want to come and work in and near the downtown by improving facilities and offerings, encourage downtown to host more remote workspace, like, green space, co-work. It could be the third place for when they no longer have an office, but they don't want to work at home. And then increase efforts to attract visitors to replace some of this potential loss you might have in the employee market. Just a couple of highlights from the consumer survey. We got 800 responses, just about 800 responses from the consumer survey. And these were users from downtown. And I guess I'll just highlight with a couple of points. The things they were most dissatisfied with was the selection of retail stores, evening business hours, physical appearance, cleanliness, and public space. And the things that they were most in favor of changing or improvements was more outdoor dining, even after COVID, improved streetscape, additional culture events, and public art, which keeps coming up. And this will be my last topic, just really quickly about district management. I think our finding here was that there's a lot of great organizations and dedicated individuals that are doing wonderful work and are related to downtown. I think that when we look about, is there one organization that is really managing and coordinating all the efforts in downtown that has a dependable funding source, we don't really see one. Certainly the Community and Economic Development Department is doing a great job. It's just that downtown is only one of their responsibilities. This is just a chart that shows different management entities. And I know you've probably talked about bids before and community development corporations and voluntary development organizations. The other one here that you might not know as much about is parking benefit districts. And what that is a district, it's enabling legislation that allows a community to dedicate some or all of the parking revenue that comes from an area to fund improvements in that area. And they can be used for wayfinding or infrastructure, or open space. They can use for marketing and promotions, and they can be used for management, for staff. So I know we're kind of going really quickly here, making up for time. So we have a really quick couple of questions to ask you, and then we want to open it up to discussion. So we're going to go back to the Menti and just ask you a couple of questions there. So here's some questions about district marketing. Could you pop in how you feel about these statements? Somebody liked everything. Okay, well, thank you for that. More to be done for marketing. Got almost like a perfect score there. Okay, I'm gonna move on. What type of downtown events would you like to attend? And can you select your top 3? Okay, thanks for doing that for us. We still got a few votes coming in. Sorry about that. Okay. And we just have 2 questions to go. If you could give us a little bit of an idea about how you feel about these statements, what you might agree with.
On mine, the final question is showing as blank.
Yeah, there is no final question. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, well, then I completely agree.
Then yeah, all the way, right? All right, thanks so much for that. And please excuse a few of our technical issues here. We learned how to use this platform in the last week for this presentation. I'm sorry, we have not worked out all the bugs. Okay, so that's helpful. And this is my last question, and this is just sort of for fun. What's the most popular restaurant among downtown Greenfield customers outside of Greenfield? So we're just going to ask you, see whether you know the answer to this one. So we've given you 5 options, and we had 800 people answering the survey, and we'll see which ones they thought they were most popular, and you think. We asked them which ones do they frequent most often.
Oh, well, that's a different question.
Okay, so popularity based on which ones they frequent most often.
And I think you mean the wagon wheel. I think that's in Gill, not in Brattleboro.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry about that. It's getting a lot of votes. Well, thank you so much for doing that. Just kind of a little bit of fun. The order that these are in, from right to left, are the order they came up in the survey. So Riffs was number 1, and then Wagon Wheel, and then Texas Roadhouse, and Black Cow, and Hillside Pizza. Okay, we're gonna move away from these, go back, and we want to open it up for some conversation. So we've talked about some ideas tonight. We've heard a lot of ideas from the different meetings that we've had, and the interviews, and the walk around tours. And, these are some of the things that have come up. And I guess what we'd like to, talk with you a little about in an open conversation is, what are the ideas that you like? Do you have anything to add? Do you have any questions? And we can just kind of open it up, and and see what people have to say.
I'd like to start by just saying thank you, Peg and company. This is a fascinating slideshow. It confirms many things I've thought over the years about downtown Greenfield, and it gives me a whole lot of food for thought. It has been extremely valuable, so thank you. And I'll sit back and listen to other commentary. Thank you. I am one of those people that is not fond of the idea of facade preservation only for the First National Bank.
Okay. Other questions or comments from folks? We thought we might want to leave this little slide up for a prompt, but I could also, if it's better for anybody, you can tell me, we could stop sharing so we can see more of people's faces. Should we do that?
Sure.
Okay, so in that way, let me, so we can now with a little gallery view, can we see more people? And any other thoughts or ideas or comments or questions from anyone? We'd love to hear what you liked or what you didn't like, or these are all ideas that may end up in your plan, you know, so that's kind of what we're doing at this point, is getting some feedback.
I have a quick question. I'm Isaac from the Garden Theater, and the comment, I saw the mayor's comment and I agreed with her 100% about nighttime activity. It's been an issue for 20 years in Greenfield. And I talked to a lot of downtown business owners, and they simply say they work full time. They're family owned business. These are independent businesses. They're not national. So they don't have employees they don't make enough money at night in order to accommodate, to pay for the employees. Minimum wage, it keeps going up. And so the costs exceed the revenue. And you have to do it for a sustainable amount of time before there is revenue. And as one of the downtown businesses that is open at night, I think other than us in the bars and some restaurants, we're at, right? We would love to see more nighttime activity downtown because we think it would help us. But I don't know how we get there. How have other communities that have been in this problem get over the gap to get to that place where it's sustainable?
Well, I think I can tell you a couple of things that places have tried, and then maybe Ted can also jump in. But lighting. So communities have tried ornamental lighting and making it more vital and at night, and that helps because it helps make it look like a place that you'd want to go. Trying doing it like one night a week or one, you know, something like that, to do kind of a trial period, or so that all the stores and restaurants are not open every night of the week, but that you pick one night. Some communities, I worked in Jamaica Plain Center, and one of the things that the reason why they started doing a First Friday event, actually there it was a First Thursday, was they wanted the stores to think about opening up later at night. And so the first Thursday night was a pilot. Everybody was open late on the first Thursdays. The next year, they extended that to each Thursday. So that's some of the things that you can try, because it's kind of chicken and egg. People, you know, the businesses don't want to be open if the customers aren't there, and the customers aren't going to come unless there's a substantial number of businesses open. Ted, do you have any thoughts to add to that?
Yeah, I think that, you know, it used to be years ago that, you know, Friday night was the night out, the shopping night, and the you know, go out to the restaurant night. I mean, all these old cities and towns, Brattleboro, Greenfield, Northampton, Fitchburg, so on. Friday night was a big night. Today, it's a little more difficult, obviously, especially with the stores. You know, the bars and the restaurants will be open, but the stores typically, as you mentioned, Isaac, you know, they have limitations in terms of that kind of coverage. But as you pointed out, Peg, there's a lot of communities that are trying to reestablish Friday night or Thursday night and try to get the stores to go along at least for a few extended hours, maybe to 7 or 8. And they'll program different activities to bring more people down, not only residents, but visitors as well. So I work with Situate and Hyannis, and they both did Friday night programs in the summertime. And they would have music, or they would have classic cars, or some other sort of draw, something for the kids possibly, just to try to, you know, mix things up and bring people, hopefully on a weekly basis. But it is a challenge, especially for the stores.
One of the advantages in Greenfield for evening is that you don't charge for parking after 5 o'clock. Most of the local communities continue to charge for parking until fairly late in the evening. Maybe that free parking after 5 would be a draw, except if nothing's open, maybe not.
Yeah, you have a lot of office space downtown, and a lot of that space is, you know, available after 5 o'clock. And so I don't think parking is an issue as far as the nighttime activity. It's just a matter of, you know, bringing something in that's going to, I mean, besides the restaurants and the bars and the Performing Arts Center, just bringing in other sort of, you know, complementary enticements, music or whatever it might be, just to get the stores to extend their hours for a couple hours extra.
I've got a general
Other
comment.
questions or comments?
Yeah, hi. So I have a comment, which is that
You're very quiet. I don't know. Is she quiet for everybody or just for me?
Everybody. I can't even tell who it is.
Whoever was just talking, would it be possible for you to talk a little louder?
this is Mary. Can you hear me now?
You sure
Yep.
can.
I thought it was you.
Great. What I wanted to say is how much I appreciate the businesses who are doing amazing things in Greenfield right now. I want to call out Greenfield Gallery and their beautiful, beautiful space and storefront. The new businesses like Plum, Rise Above is amazing. And I think something that the city could do, I'm not sure how we do this, but if we could clean up some of those vacant storefronts and require some sort of minimum standards so we're not walking past these just utterly depressing spaces, I think perhaps more people would take a gamble, as have some of those businesses that I just mentioned. I just think there's such really amazing potential, and I believe that cleaning up the downtown, however we can do that, however we can force these business owners, these building owners' hands to, put a better storefront would go a long way to helping out the situation.
Rachel, do you have your hand up?
I do indeed. Thank you. I had a couple of thoughts. I'm with Roxanne on the First National. I think the facade only idea in that specific location is, it just doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't seem like a space that would be used. The parking issue is one that comes up, although from my observation as a downtown business owner, now granted, I'm not like some of the restaurants doing takeout that have a high churn. Our customers are more sparse throughout the day, but the biggest challenge that I see with the parking is that a lot of it is taken up by employees of the businesses. And it's because they don't really have another option. And I think there's a fairly simple solution to that, which is that you require the business owners, when they get their business license, which renews every other year, to purchase a certain number of parking permits for the nearest lot. And then they can offer that to their employees as a bonus. Like, you get free parking. Yes, you have to park in the lot that's a half a block away. You don't get to be right in front, but it's free, and free will be enough incentive to get the employees to do it. And, by requiring it as part of the business registration, it's pretty simple. And then the other issue that I really wanted to comment on was the chicken and egg situation. We really faced that a lot. I tried to kick off a First Fridays art walk 4 or 5 years ago when I first opened the gallery, and we did get a little traction with it, but there's a real problem of critical mass. So if the people aren't downtown, the small business owners can't afford to stay open, as was pointed out by someone else earlier. As the owner of the business, there's only so many hours you can work in a week. And many of our businesses are really 1 and 2 person operations. So they're often in that situation where the owner would have to cover. And then, of course, from the customer's perspective, if nothing's open, you don't want to come down. So you got to break that one way or the other. And I have seen that event type things are very effective at drawing people downtown. The Bee Fest that we had on Saturday, we actually had to work to keep people away from that event because we did not make full in-person planning because throughout the months of the planning stage, we just didn't know where we were going to be. So we planned it as largely a virtual event, hoping for no more than 20 to 30 people walking from B to B for the reveals, and then filming and using that later on the website. And people just kept gravitating onto the group because, whoa, there's something going on. And they just like drawn to it like moths. So I think, that may be one way to kind of break out of that captive cycle. And the other is maybe, as you start to implement those activities and you're promoting that to the public to get them to come, also promote that to the business owners. Let them know that you're doing it. Alert them that there's going to be an extra 500 people downtown. Maybe give the business owners a concrete incentive to stay open. If you stay open, we'll give you a gift certificate to a local restaurant or something like that. Whatever, some small incentive that might help, get them to do it. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about was very briefly, I know I'm taking a lot of time. I'm sorry if I'm filibustering, but I have so many ideas. The town directory issue. I love the idea of a kiosk. I greatly dislike the idea of the chamber for a number of reasons. The chamber is county focused, not Greenfield focused, and we get very little of their attention. And downtown specifically, despite them being there, gets almost none of their attention. The GBA is really supposed to fill that gap where the chamber isn't. Physically, the location is no good for a visitor center. It's the wrong end of town. You enter town, most of our visitors are going to enter from the other direction, from the highway or from Route 5, not from the Route 2 end where the chamber is. But I think a lot of that can be done digitally. One of the things that came up in our conversations around the bees, we have an audio promenade that goes with the bees. So you get an app on your phone, and as you walk up to each location, it starts, plays a little music and has an audio talk about the bee or about the location. It's like a museum tour kind of. And the question came up, well, what if somebody sees the bee first but doesn't know about the audio tour? Can we put a little QR code or something on the bee so that they can scan it and get the tour and start it? And I said, that's a great idea, but why stop there? Why not use that QR code to bring people into our digital infrastructure? Whether the landing page is the city website or the chamber's website or a new landing page, whatever it is, a central point that links out to all the many other sites that have calendars and programming and information. And that QR code can go everywhere. It can go on the bees. It can be made into a little 8.5 by 11 flyer that the business owners can print out and put in their window. And that can almost take the place of a brick and mortar visitor center and add so much more to it. Because when you go there, now you're at a digital landing page. So there can be other content, there can be movies, there can be calendars, there can be business listings. And, you know, any one thing that the person happens to be going there to do, because so much of our traffic is mission-based. They're coming into town to run an errand. They have to do a thing. But if they're there at that thing and that thing serves as the entry point and they say, gee, I just saw that sculpture. What the heck's going on downtown? Let me scan this QR code. Boom, now you got them hooked and maybe you get something else. So that was a quick dump of a whole bunch of ideas that I've been holding up throughout the meeting. And thank you for bearing with me.
Great, thank you. So George T., you have your hand up?
Thanks. Actually, Hannah had her hand up before me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
George, you're so nice. I'll be quick, but I'm glad because I did want to go off of what Rachel was saying and just share, not only in Greenfield, but throughout the Valley, I think what Peg referred to as the window of opportunity for bringing people downtown and having events. We are really in a moment where people are so hungry for things to do. So I just wanted to throw out a gentle placemaking reminder that not every event needs to be huge. I think we should build up to big events and have big events, but if you have an event idea, even a small event idea, if you know a business owner who has an event idea, encouraging some smaller things to happen is much more manageable and will start the flow a little bit quicker than like a block party, which I think is a great idea, but it's going to take some planning. So just really looking for some of the low-hanging fruit events wise, and I'm happy to take a deeper dive anytime into that. But, you know, for example, hopefully next time this kind of conversation will be in person outside somewhere, and, you know, maybe we won't get that many people, but people will start to come. So just want to advocate for that and everything. And I appreciate everything that's been said so much. George.
Thanks, Anna. Thanks, Peg. Yeah, I just want to suggest the idea of with events and with different business interests, just trying to attract different constituent groups downtown. And in that regard, I want to give a particular shout out to Isaac and the Garden Cinema, because I've been following closely, you know, the emails about what they've been programming over the last year, and it's really been very innovative. And I felt terrible that most of us weren't comfortable going down to the theater to watch this stuff. But you know, with bringing not just contemporary films but classics and some more artsy kind of films that would, you know, so it would attract a different range of folks who with different interests and, you know, lifestyle stuff like that. So I thought that was a wonderful example. It just got me thinking about, you know, trying to have a wide variety of things that would attract youth, that would attract, you know, other interests and things like that. Thank you.
Great. Benjamin. Benjamin, are you still there? You have your hand up? Let's go to the mayor. She's got her hand up.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I want to play off on George's compliment to Isaac. I too share that. And good on you, Isaac. I'm looking forward to being able to take advantage at some point in the near future of one of those events. But I'm delighted that you're continuing to do that. And bear with us, playing off of Rachel's comments as well. Bear with us here in the city. Thankfully, as a result of the city council's vote on the budget last week, I have additional money in my marketing budget where there was none before. So anything is good. MJ does too. We are in discussion about how best to use that. But also, more importantly, I think, and what is more exciting for us in City Hall is the fact that I got a redesign of the website funded as well. So you will see a much more exciting, better, I hope in the near future. It's an RFP process, so that's what I mean by bear with us. It's not happening tomorrow, but we will put together a much more exciting, people-friendly, user-friendly, whether you're just trying to figure out how to get a dog license or where you want to go next for the most exciting event, and to also market Greenfield in a better way. So, but those things are in the works, and we're all excited in City Hall, or at least in the executive office and the economic development office, to get that going.
Great. I think Benjamin got his microphone issues figured out now. We got a note. Benjamin, are you there now? Okay, I got a little message that he had his microphone figured out, but maybe we're still in process there.
And Ginny DeSorger is looking to be called on.
Go right
Hi.
ahead.
Thank you. A shout out to all the businesses that are doing such a great job. I am on economic development, and we've talked about this issue with nighttime, with the movies that will be at night, and the Hawks and Reeds. And I think that we have the most fabulous group of volunteers in the world. I was just thinking about this, of trying to pair some of these things together. I heard Isaac saying that they're family businesses, etc. But if some help were needed at night to keep things open, look at what you do with the ice sculptures. You've got volunteers all night to guard ice sculptures. Now, just bear with me a minute, because it might seem a little off, but we have a senior tax work-off program. We have great groups of people here. You could make, like economic developments night to man some downtown business, or help with that. And I just think look at the people we got to do vaccine clinics for day after day after day. So I'd put my name in. I'm a night owl with a buddy, somebody that was fun, or a couple of you that were fun. I'm looking at a lot of you people around here right now, and I like a lot of you. Actually, I like all of you that are here. And I think I could find a couple of buddies. I just am trying to rope 3 more people that I walk with into doing some watering. And I think if some of you that are doing this want to go home, I could help with one of the things to keep them open, so there was a place to go. And don't forget the senior work-off thing. It's a thought, because I've never seen a place that had so many wonderful volunteers. My second point on the storefronts that are empty is
Didn't hear it. Sorry.
My was just
I'll listen another time.
we want to make it a little bit well, I don't know, a little harder. I don't want to say anything not appropriate, but so that they're, that's not as easy for them to have a vacant storefront. I don't know how one would do that because I haven't ever been a mayor before. I'm having enough trouble doing the job I do. But just don't forget about the volunteers. Over now.
Okay, thank you. Christy, I think you have your hand up.
Yes, I'm the incoming president of the Franklin County Rotary Club. And we also have an Interact Club in Deerfield. We don't have one in Greenfield at the moment, but we're always looking for service projects. And so if there's anything we could contribute, if, in any aspect in helping downtown, we'd be happy to, to be considered. We've got some bodies and a lot of people that really want to do stuff and help the community. So
Great. Great. Does anybody else want to say anything at this time?
I'm still trying to get this mic to work. Is it
Oh,
working?
there we go.
Oh,
Yeah.
it works. I just had to turn off every Bluetooth thing that I own, and now I have to control the computer. I'm not using the video because I'm unshaven. I look like a crazy person. I also think that it would be not the right move to try to save the facade on First National Bank. I mean, I worked in a lot of remodeling for many years, and it's hard for me to imagine that that building is actually worth trying to salvage. I've been inside it. It's a really unhealthful environment. There's just silicate in the air everywhere because the scratch coat masonry has just been disintegrating off of the building for, I don't know, decades. And it feels to me like a sunk cost fallacy because the town did spend a bunch of money to try to stabilize that building many years ago. And I really feel like it's just something we should turn the page on. And if we could possibly do a controlled demolition of it, you could open up that little corridor for what could be a really nice little park. Just plant a bunch of trees and have it be a pretty space. It could be more outdoor seating for any number of things. And actually, I mean, there's the Veterans Memorial also on Main Street. Could be a lot prettier than it is. Right now, it's this weird concrete space, which is not very appealing. There's a fountain that hasn't been working for a very long time. In the summertime, it's baking hot in there. During the daytime, there's nothing to encourage people to linger there. And it could be a pretty space if we just planted more trees, jackhammered up the concrete, made it more appealing. Little things like that, it's like people just can keep walking past it and maybe look by and like, what is that? And they don't check it out because it's unappealing. You had a slide of the Chapman Street hole, as we like to call it, which is that big empty foundation at the end of my street. And that just seems to me like a massive impediment to trying to attract new businesses that are in any of the spaces that would be adjacent to that. So we've got this big Chapman Street hole, and there's, what was a building had burned down years ago, and there's a weird little vacant lot there. It's really unbeautiful, and it's just crying out for something. Let's fill in the Chapman Street hole and plant some trees. Like, why that's been allowed to stagnate, I've been living in this town since 2004. Chapman Street hole was there when I bought my house, and I don't know how long it was there before then. Ditto Cart Hardware, big, giant, hulking, ugly building, absentee landlord, allowed to just leave it vacant for tax write-off purposes. I know it's a big pain in everybody's butt to try to do things by eminent domain, but if we'd done it a long time ago, we'd probably own the building outright and could have torn it down and used it for any number of projects that keep getting talked about, like the public safety complex, things like that. But I think things like that, these sort of manageable problems that we've just allowed to sort of fester for decades, are not a good endorsement for businesses coming to the town. If the town looks like it doesn't have its act together or take itself seriously, then people might say, oh, if they're looking for a place to locate a business, it's probably going to knock our town down on their list of possible places to open a spot. So those are just some of the things that that bother me. I mean, the vacant storefronts. I mean, why is it profitable to a landlord to allow them to sit vacant? Is there something we can be doing about that to make a penalty for allowing places to sit vacant versus getting somebody in there? Because the more vacancy you have in a main street, the more derelict it looks. Even if you have a fair amount of occupancy, it can really pull the whole place down visually and make it less appealing to people who don't live in the town, who aren't boosters for the town and, you know, looking to have it succeed. So those are just some of the points that have been on my mind for a while, and I'm glad to have had the chance to express them today.
Well, thank you for that. I just want to clarify. I think we got everything that you said, but you started out saying about the First National Bank, and I thought you were saying you don't agree with preserving the facade, but really what you don't agree with is preserving it at all. Is that right? Do I have that correct?
Correct. I mean, if it made some kind of fiscal sense to preserve the facade, or if there was some innovative use that it was going to be put to, I wouldn't think that that was ridiculous in and of itself. But it seems to me that that building is a real money pit waiting to happen. And I think it would be a far more sensible option to just cut our losses and figure out something else to do with not just the building, but the space itself.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Because it seems like there's 3 different conversations about like preserving it, you know, trying to do something with it, preserve only the facade, and then, like you said, cut your losses and just, you know.
Yeah, it's not. It seems like it would be an extremely expensive proposition that would not pay for itself no matter what, unless you had some amazing grant to do it from some historical society that felt it was of real importance. But unfortunately, all the things that would have attracted a historical society grant were torn out of it by some sleazy guy that came in and stripped all the beautiful Art Deco stuff out from inside of it long ago. If we don't know what that building would be used for, why should we sink a bunch of money into trying to preserve it at great expense? Otherwise, open up the space. Or if somebody else wants to build something else there, but we have to make the space available, it seems to me.
So we're coming up at the end of our time, but how about we will take a comment? Thank you. I'm so glad, Benjamin, you got your microphone fixed. We have one more hand up. Why don't we take a comment from Judy, and then we have to wind up a little bit.
Okay, can folks hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I'm having so many issues with my computer. I'm seeing a black screen, but my sound is working. Just a few quickie things I wanted to mention. One was I thought the comment regarding trying to encourage folks to go back to work was interesting. You know, you brought up the downtown center and some of the work we're doing with the Rural Innovation Center, and I was thinking that over the coming year, there's going to be so many different programs populating that building that it's going to be pretty full of people. And I think just having people in spaces downtown is going to contribute to businesses getting more business. So I'm really excited about those possibilities. The other thing I wanted to mention is, I think some people know I've developed a volunteer program for older adults in the region. I'm up to over 100 volunteers. It's been really challenging with the pandemic to get them connected. But the reason I'm bringing this up in part is because we surveyed that group about what they were most interested in terms of workshops and educational opportunities, and local history was far and away the #1 vote getter. So I was thinking about how cool it would be to, you know, even train some of our youth to give those kinds of tours and really encourage intergenerational relationships, but also learning about local history. Wait, I had 2 more quickie things. Oh, the third thing was, you know, Hannah mentioned the pandemic and sort of the timing right now of people really wanting to get back together and this being a good time to encourage community gatherings. I've also been thinking a lot about, I speak with the Greenfield High School principal, among other administrators in town, about what's going on for young people. And, you know, there's been a lot of impact too of spending so much time on social media. And there's some brilliant documentaries that have come out recently. And I was thinking about connecting with Isaac to see if we could do some community viewings of some of those really powerful documentaries and talk amongst ourselves about how to encourage you to be engaged in activities other than iPads, iPhones, and computers. And then the final thing I wanted to mention is that this past year I received a grant from the Opioid Task Force and was able to get about 14 people in the region trained on a course around entrepreneurial mindset. And we are planning, and Hannah's well aware of this because the Pioneer Valley leadership team is working with us on marketing, but we're planning to launch several of those this next year and make them thematic So for example, you might make one theme, you know, how do we solve this seemingly intractable problem around transportation? Or, but we'll be theming these ice houses, and I think I've seen several comments in the chat about trying to get input beyond, I think, the people that are often at the table. How do we get the folks who are often not at the table, get their perspectives? And I think these courses will be one of those ways of doing that. Hearing from populations that we don't typically hear from, and really encouraging entrepreneurial out-of-the-box thinking about how we attack some of these problems that have been long-standing that I think we've sort of given up on because we just think they're always going to be around. So that's it. Thank you for giving me a little bit of time.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. I think it probably makes sense to wind up about here. We went over our time, and I'm so sorry about that. I hope that it was worthwhile time spent. We really appreciate your efforts. I'm just going to quickly talk about what's next, and then turn it over to MJ. So the next phase of this process is to review the community input we've gotten, refine the ideas, a little more research on the ideas and refine them, narrow them down to actionable recommendations, create a draft plan, and then come back out to the community to get feedback on that plan. So we want to gather community feedback on it and then finalize the plan for submission. And that would be, that is like between now and August. So the next phase would, you know, a little bit more refining of the ideas over the next month or so, and then drafting the plan, which is really just the set of recommendations, and coming back out for more input. So this has been really helpful to get your input, and we will continue to be looking for your input. MJ, I'm going to throw it back over to you.
All right. So I want to just thank all of you for coming and spending this time this evening, hearing this information. You know, it's the first step, and we'll get that information out so you can mull it over the weekend, share it with other people who might not have been able to participate tonight, give us some additional feedback, and we'll be back out in touch to let you know the next steps and when that's going to happen. Mayor, I'm going to flip it over to you to say good evening to everyone.
Yes, ditto what MJ just said. This has been very great, and I'm so appreciative of all the people who contributed and all the people who were here. Some great ideas. Just know that many of them are being worked on, and I'm happy that everyone has had an opportunity to participate. I'm looking forward to more of this. So keep it going, Peg and MJ. Thank you, and good night, everyone.
All right. Thank you.